Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Shelby Oaks. I guess this is a bigger sort of YouTube movie because it is directed by Chris Stuckman, who has been a long time film critic on the YouTube website. And he has crowdfunded this movie. It got picked up by Neon and Mike Flanagan. He wrote this with his wife, all this stuff, and he made a movie. I'm going to treat this as any other movie. However I feel about Chris Stuckman and his reviews is sort of that's not what I'm reviewing here, so whatever. You can look at my thoughts on that. But as for a movie, I'll treat this like it would any other movie. I think Chris Stuckman is very influenced clearly by horror and stuff, but Christopher Nolan, and I think has sort of similar sensibilities that I don't like about Christopher Nolan that I can definitely see in this movie. I can tell he wants to be a genre filmmaker, maybe a really well shot genre filmmaker, but I don't know if he has anything to really say with the genre. It feels like he just likes being there. He doesn't like having sort of a reason for why he's using it, which I think separates the sort of genre directors from the real, directors of impact who we all reference and talk about all the time. As a simple genre thing, and I guess, they say when you make your first film or early stuff, it's just like you're just trying to tell the story and complete the thing and all that stuff. And I guess, on the low bar that is, or the whole thing where I'm supposed to like this just because he did it kind of thing, I guess he did succeed, which is neat. But he succeeded in being able to put forth an artistic vision. What an artistic vision means and represents and what you can use it for, I don't know if that necessarily says more than you just made a genre movie cool and not a particularly standout-ish one. And I think like his over seriousness and his lack of to really have any fun with the sense of humor, which you could definitely have fun with in particular parts, really holds this film back from being anything other than, another kind of horror movie that came out in the theaters. There was this YouTube channel called Paranormal Paranoids, I guess in early YouTube, and they would go to spooky places and investigate stuff. And then one day they're all murdered except for this one girl. And then cut to now Riley Brennan kind of disappeared. I think could still be alive. Her sister, all these years later, is still looking for her, still trying to find her, and is on a quest to find her. We're introduced that through a kind of documentary at the beginning of the film, and then it becomes a narrative after that, and it becomes that, and we see someone come to her house. This is not a spoiler, and shoot himself in the face and give her a mini DV tape, which of course she has the technology for, I guess, because early YouTube used a lot of cameras that just had a simple import cable and a DV thing. It was a whole thing. But yes, then she goes on a quest to sort of figure out what happened to her sister, as you learn that it has sort of ruined her life, but she wants to find her and finally see what happened to her at Shelby Oaks, which was a abandoned amusement park where they went to investigate. I don't know. I don't see any reason to watch this more than once, other than if you're massively into Chris Stuckman or something like that. But the beginning of this, I do think works, where it's basically a documentary catching up on the paranormal paranoids and what's going on and all the info, and playing, like some people said, a Netflix documentary, but playing like any sort of true crime documentary. I wish, and I think this part kind of clued me into like the over seriousness of this movie, and not to say this stuff is not serious. I'm sure some, it is serious, but like, if you had a major horror director or something, they would use that as an opportunity to say something like he's been on YouTube this whole time. Like, let's start with the paranormal paranoids. Like, that's a dumb Scooby-Doo ass name, but why doesn't that look like, Nostalgia Critic and ABGN and stuff? Why doesn't it look like that when you'd be like, oh, that's early YouTube? Oh my god, like, yeah, totally. Or like the earlier, paranormal stuff, like cheesier and stuff, to like have sort of some fun with it and date it to show us how long it's been. They don't do that. And then the documentary, it's like, it doesn't have like a weird narration or something. It's not like, the WNUF Halloween special or something like that. The idea is like you're watching this footage in this program, but the information in the program is what is important, not how they present you the information, which I thought was like interesting, and I think kind of shows like what kind of film this is, because as a filmmaker, he's not as interested in why he's presenting it to you. He's presenting it to you. And it's sort of the problem, because like I don't think this film says anything, and isn't really like Weapons. I don't necessarily think that film. I think he used that film to get over grief, but I don't think it's saying anything about that necessarily. This is like, I don't know what we're trying to do here, other than tell a spooky genre tale, and I guess it succeeds in that. But like, it just feels not very special at all. But yeah, not having fun with the news broadcasts and that were kind of tip-offs, and it did feel like Christopher Nolan. Like Christopher Nolan will never do really fun media parodies, or like he'll do people playing in their dreams, but not as funny and crazy as Freddy or something. He, and I felt that way about Stuckman. Like he can't just have this lady investigating it and like being a real person and stuff. She's like always serious and everything sucks, and like all, and I get that, but like they couldn't have fun with it at all. Like it felt like it like was such a bummer most of the time, and I get that is a bummer situation, but it just didn't seem like he wanted to have fun with the audience. He wanted you to be really serious in taking the story, and they were like, I think what can really hurt a horror film is if like the lapse in judgment or logic really makes no sense at all. I know people are like, of course the killer's gonna follow you down that corner, like, or something. Like that's not what I mean. There's a part where like she's watching some footage, this lady who's trying to find her sister, and then she sees the footage and goes, I have to go to the haunted abandoned prison at night right now. And you're like, no, what? No, lady. I just like, it's one thing if like they go and like it took them a while and it's getting dark and they're determined to do it and stuff, but like it's like definitely dark. She goes there, which I'm like, bad idea. And then like she finds all this stuff from it, but it's like such a weird premise. And I think that's the other thing, is like if it had been like making fun of that, or like the situation led to it, or there's some humor about it, I think I would have let that go. But it was so overly serious about itself. It was like I could tell it was not. I could tell it was like sort of a lazy reason to get there, and it kind of works after that. But I do feel like the ultimate conclusion, when you find out what happened and all that stuff, it really isn't very satisfying. It kind of doesn't teach me, I don't think there's like a lesson to be had here. Kind of a genre film and a genre filmmaker who needs to hit all of his beats and stuff. I don't think he's like that good of a filmmaker. I don't really get the appeal necessarily, and this feels like somebody who can kind of coast on notoriety and stuff. It's not horrible. It's sort of just like being there, doing its thing. It's quick. I like that about it, but it just, you really need to use, if you're going to use horror, say something with it. I know, some of it is in church and stuff, but it really didn't feel like that directly. It just said creepy stuff happens and we go on this thing, and like, my whole advice as a filmmaker for him would be like, have more fun, play around with stuff more, experiment more. Like I think Nolan and Kubrick and those guys are clearly influences on him in this film. Knew how to and when to play around, and it just feels like he's just so overly serious with this. It's hard to really like enjoy it in any way. It does feel like a late August, early September kind of horror movie, where you see it, or you eventually see it and go, oh, okay. And like, I can see some promise in him as a filmmaker. I'm not gonna lie about that. I thought the documentary footage actually reminded me not of the Blair Witch, but the documentary Sci-Fi Channel aired to promote the Blair Witch, which I thought was interesting. I thought it was an interesting way to start it, but just the lacks of logic and how evidence showed up just felt very ham-fisted and forced and all that stuff. And I wish he had really thought about like why his choices were happening. It felt like he's like, I need to get from point A to point B. And they're like, what's the cause of that? And he goes, well, we got to point B. I don't understand what the problem is. And like the prison thing, I think, going to a prison, an abandoned, haunted prison at night, like, all those things. That's not like you're going to go to the abandoned, haunted prison at night, lady. Like, come on. Like, I don't think it was in the emergency. You acted like your sister's been dead for 10 years. And then you're like, okay, well, now it's been 10 years. I'll go to the haunted, abandoned prison at night. Like, I don't know. There were a couple times like that where it's like, oh, you're just whatever, man. Fuck it. We just need to get there. And it really hinders the story, because I think like better horror movies like make you go, oh no, and then that happened. This is like, and then we got there. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the cause. And it just felt sort of like both lazy and not, I think, thinking your story through and not even wanting to engage with it on that level, which I think is a mistake completely. As a movie, I found this to be like rather blah. I think I think the Five Nights at Freddy's movie might be better or something. It's just, there's not much to it. It's not that impressive. I think there is some, like, especially at the beginning, like you can sense there is somewhat of a director voice and there could be more interesting things in the future. But this is not that movie. I think like Kerr's supernatural thriller stuff. In this one, it sort of feels like the characters could have done absolutely nothing and we'd get sort of the same result, which made this feel like a total wasted exercise, frankly. I wish he gets a better script at some point. I do think there's some promise there. I think there could be something interesting. But this is really not that interesting other than who made it. And that's really kind of it. That's neat, and I'm glad someone got to make a movie, especially a YouTube film critic. That's awesome. I don't have the desire and or time to do that, but good for him, and congratulations, I guess. But I wish the movie had been better, but I just don't think, like, if you're gonna get into horror, get into horror because you have something to say. And if what you have to say is, yay, I made a movie, my next question would be like, well, why is it yay we made a movie other than the fact that you did it? And if it's just the fact that he did it, I find that to be a really empty experience. If you're a first-time filmmaker and stuff, that is a cool feeling and it's amazing and it's wonderful. But you become a much better filmmaker when you make your second or third film and you have something to say with it. And I think like the fact that this like just didn't and wasn't entirely enjoyable, and I don't think had the scares there. I don't know if Shelby Oaks was really worth visiting, and because of its notoriety and stuff, will be revisited and re-talked about. So I feel bad for all those people, but for me, I just really found this to sort of be a bit subpar with promise, and I think that's the best we're really going to get for me and about Chris Stuckman's debut feature. So if you have seen Shelby Oaks and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.